The day I moved in with my husband, his mother handed me a schedule and said, "This is how you'll run the house, just like I do." My husband nodded and said, "She's right, follow it." I smiled and handed him my own paper. He read it, and suddenly begged me not to leave. I married Brian 6 months ago. We met during college in Austin, Texas. He was charming, sweet, and always talked about how close he was to his mom, Anita. At the time, I thought it was adorable. My own mom passed when I was a teen, so watching him call her every night and be so involved in her life seemed wholesome. It made me feel safe, like this guy came from a good home. I thought Anita would be someone I could call mom someday too. Fast forward to our wedding, a small, low-budget ceremony in the hill country. No drama, just close friends, some wine, and dancing under string lights. The plan was to stay temporarily at Brian's childhood home while we saved for our own place. I agreed. Rent is insane in San Antonio, and we were trying to be smart. So after the honeymoon, we packed up and drove down to his family's house. The moment we pulled into the driveway, I felt like I was walking into something off. Anita was standing outside waiting for us, not smiling, not waving, just standing there holding something. She didn't say welcome home, no hug, no how was the trip. Instead, she said, "Here, this is how you'll run the house, just like I do." I looked down. It was a color-coded, laminated house schedule. I laughed out loud. I thought it was a joke. Maybe this was some weird southern hazing ritual. Maybe she wanted to test me. Then Brian stepped beside her and said, "She's right, follow it." Just like that, stone-faced, no wink, no grin. He meant it. Something snapped in me. Let me paint the picture clearly. This was not a list of chores. It was a military-grade, hour-by-hour breakdown of how I was supposed to run her household. Not our household, hers. The schedule. Weekdays. 5:30 a.m. wake up. Laundry starts by 5:45. 6 a.m. breakfast cooked and ready. 7 a.m. Anita gets coffee served to her. 7:30 a.m. clean all 3 bathrooms. 8:30 a.m. grocery planning. 10 a.m. vacuum and mop entire downstairs and upstairs. 12 p.m. prepare lunch. 1 p.m. iron clothes. 2 p.m. bake something sweet. 3:30 p.m. fold all laundry. Put away his and her laundry, not theirs, mine and Brian's. Hers stayed in her room. I fold my own things. She said, "You're not there yet." 4:30 p.m. dinner prep begins. 6 p.m. dinner served. 7 p.m. clean up dishes, wipe surfaces. 8 p.m. free time. Weekends. Deep cleaning days. Sundays were for spa prep, which meant setting up the living room like a spa, lighting candles, running her a bath, then massaging her feet. I wish I was joking. I turned to Brian and said, "You're not serious, right?" His exact words were, "You're part of the family now. We all have roles. This is yours." I don't know what face I made, but Anita immediately stepped forward and said, "If this is going to be a problem, I suggest you go back to your mother's." That's when Brian stepped closer to her, not me. He didn't say anything to defend me, didn't try to explain or soften anything, just stood there. That's when I knew I was alone in this house. So I smiled, I nodded, and I said absolutely, I'll take this seriously. I lay awake in the guest room they assigned me. Yes, the guest room. They said we would get the master once I had proven myself as a wife, like it was some twisted promotion ladder. I looked at the ceiling and made a decision. If they wanted schedules, I'd give them one. So I typed my own on my laptop at 3 a.m. I created a schedule titled Exit Plan. Day 1, play along, don't resist, let them feel in control. Day 2, begin collecting screenshots, conversations, rules, recordings. Day 3, pack essentials in a bag, leave the rest. Day 4, speak to a lawyer. Day 5, mail this schedule to Brian and his mother with a note, "Thanks for the experience." I printed it, folded it, and put it in my suitcase. I followed the schedule. I got up early, cooked eggs and toast, and served Anita her coffee just the way she wanted. 1 sugar, 1 cream, in a glass mug, not ceramic. Brian left for work at 7:45 a.m. He didn't even look at me. Anita walked behind me the whole morning, nitpicking. Use the vacuum on the curtains too. Didn't I mention that? Don't fold like that. Brian likes his shirts stacked vertically. Did you check the temperature of the fridge? We do that twice a day. I nodded, said nothing. By 2:30 p.m., I started recording on my phone. I placed it on the table, recording voice memos. I got her on tape saying, "You'll never run this house like I do. But if you try hard enough, maybe Brian won't leave you like his last girlfriend." Wait, what? That night, after she went to bed, I went to the downstairs computer room and did a little digging. I found Anita's old emails, printed and left on the desk. Curiosity got the better of me. The subject line of one email read, "About Brian's last engagement." I clicked it. Apparently, Brian had been engaged before. It ended after 2 months of living with Anita. There was mention of boundary issues, emotional pressure, and even a mild breakdown. The girl, her name wasn't listed, accused Anita of gaslighting and controlling behavior. Brian took his mother's side. Sound familiar? I woke up at 5:30 a.m., got dressed, wrote a short note, and taped it to the fridge. "I'm stepping out for a few errands. Be back soon." I didn't come back. I had already packed my suitcase and left it in the car. I drove straight to a hotel, called my cousin in Houston, she's a lawyer, and sent her everything. She called me back 30 minutes later and said, "You need to get out completely. You have everything let's hit them hard." That night, I texted Brian. I left a new schedule on the table. "Read it." He did. He called me, crying. I didn't answer. I wanted to. I wanted to believe the tears meant something, that maybe he'd seen the light, that maybe he realized what he had allowed. Instead, I sent him one text: "You can email me when you're ready to speak like a grown man. Until then, I need space." Then I blocked his number. I was staying at a Holiday Inn near the airport. Nothing fancy, but I needed time to breathe. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from either of them. Then, one morning, I opened the door to my hotel room to grab the food I had ordered, and Anita was standing right there, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil. Her face was calm, too calm. She said, "I figured you'd be here." Brian was worried. He hasn't eaten in days. I stared at her. My body froze. I asked, "How did you find me?" She smiled and said, "I always keep track of my family." Then she pushed the casserole into my hands. I didn't take it. "I always keep track of my family," she said, pushing a casserole into my hands. I didn't take it. Then, she handed me something else, an envelope. Inside was a printed Bible verse. "Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord." Ephesians 5 verse 22. Underneath the verse, she had written, "This household follows God's word. Please reflect." No joke, she had it printed, underlined, signed, and dated like it was some kind of legal document. That's when I laughed. I didn't mean to, it just came out of me. Then I said, "Ma'am, if your version of submission means I have to act like your unpaid servant, you can keep this." I folded the paper, gently placed it back in her hands, and shut the door. Brian finally emailed me. It was long and rambling. He wrote things like, "I didn't think it was that serious. You never said you hated the house. My mom was just trying to help you adjust. And the one that really got me, I just thought you'd be more traditional, like we talked about before." I wrote back just one line: "Your definition of traditional looks a lot like slavery." He didn't respond for a week. My cousin Rachel, the lawyer, was working on my annulment papers. But while she was doing that, something happened that made things worse. I got a letter in the mail, not an email, not a text, mail, a formal-looking letter from a lawyer. Anita was filing a personal damages claim against me. Her claim? That I left the household, causing her emotional distress and mental strain. She literally accused me of abandonment of family duty. I showed the letter to Rachel, and she nearly spit out her coffee. "Is she trying to sue you for not being her maid?" she asked. "Basically, yes." Rachel called the lawyer listed on the letterhead. He sounded embarrassed. He said Anita had insisted on filing, but it wasn't going anywhere. "It's not a real case," he said. "She's venting. We didn't even file it in court." But that wasn't the worst part. He slipped up. "To be honest, she's done this before, to the last girl. We dropped it that time too." The last girl. The one from the emails, Brian's ex-fiancée. So I wasn't just part of a messed up family, I was part of a pattern. I became obsessed with finding the previous woman. I dug through Reddit. I searched old Facebook groups. I even messaged some mutuals from college I barely knew. And I found her. Let's call her Sarah. We met for coffee in a small cafe in downtown San Antonio. She was polite, kind eyes, quiet voice. But when I told her who I was and what happened to me, she leaned back in her seat and just nodded. "I was engaged to Brian for 6 months, she said. It ended because of his mother." She showed me the scar on her hand from burning herself while cleaning their oven. Anita made her redo it twice, because she didn't use the right sponge. She told me Brian watched it happen and said, "You should have listened to her instructions." I asked why she stayed so long. She said, "Because I thought it was me. I thought if I was just a little better, they'd stop." Before I left, Sarah told me something I wasn't ready for. She said Anita used to tell Brian that if he ever chose a woman over her, she'd disown him, take him out of the will, and stop paying his loans. I said, "Loans?" Sarah nodded. Apparently, Brian has been living off his mother's money for years. His car, in her name, his student loans, she pays them. The monthly bills, covered. His phone, still on her family plan. He never told me. I sat in my hotel room after that, staring at the ceiling. This wasn't just about chores. This wasn't just about a schedule. I had married a man who was still a child, financially, emotionally, spiritually, and his mother had no plans to ever let go of him. He wasn't just controlled, he was owned. I finally understood the truth. I could never win, not because I wasn't good enough, but because the game was rigged from the start. Now I knew, Brian wasn't just silent because he was clueless. He was silent because he was trapped. Not saying that to excuse him, he's a grown man. He could have spoken up, he could have chosen me, but he didn't. Anita had built a world where he had no backbone, no control, and no real freedom, and he had accepted it, because that world came with comfort. But here's where it gets worse. I found out he was hiding way more than just his money problems. My cousin Rachel was helping me sort through some paperwork for the annulment when she asked for my bank statements from the last 3 months. While looking through them, she paused. Then she asked, "Did you authorize a $2,500 transfer to something called Household Reserve Fund?" I said, "What? No." She turned the laptop toward me. There it was. 3 transfers, each around $800 to $900, labeled Household Reserve Fund. The account it went to, a joint account with Brian and Anita. I nearly threw up. He'd been using my account, our joint, newlywed account, to send money to his mother behind my back. I had a feeling he still had access to the login credentials for our joint bank account, but I never expected him to abuse it. I had moved out, sure, but we hadn't legally separated yet. I hadn't changed all the passwords. Stupid mistake. So I checked the account history. Not only had he made those 3 transfers, but he had also used my debit card twice for groceries at his mom's house. One purchase was nearly $300 at Whole Foods. I confronted him, emailed him with screenshots. I kept it calm. Using our joint account without my consent is theft. I will be locking everything down by the end of the day. You have 24 hours to respond. He replied 15 minutes later. It wasn't theft. I needed help keeping the house running. You left. What was I supposed to do? Not, you moved out because of emotional abuse. Not, I'm sorry I didn't protect you. Just, you left. I thought that would be the end of it. But Anita always had one more card to play. I got an email invitation. Subject line, let's bring peace to our home. A family reconciliation dinner. Location, a country club in Alamo Heights. Time 7 p.m. Dress code, formal attire. I stared at it for 5 minutes, thinking it had to be a joke. Then Rachel said, let's go. I blinked. Why? She grinned. You want your evidence? Let them give you the rope. I wore black, clean, minimal makeup, hair tied back. Rachel sat 2 tables away, pretending to be an unrelated guest with her laptop. She had her phone recording audio. I had my own recorder in my clutch bag. The room was exactly what I expected. White tablecloths, candlelight, and a smug Anita at the head of the table. Brian was already seated, wearing a blazer he couldn't afford. There was no warmth in his face. Just that weird, empty stare I'd gotten used to. Anita stood when I walked in, gave me her kisses, then gestured for the waiter to pour champagne. She said, I just want to apologize for any misunderstandings between us. I know it's hard for a woman like you, independent, raised without a mother, to come into a traditional family. I nearly laughed in her face. Halfway through the dinner, while picking at the dry chicken, Anita cleared her throat, and said, I know this has all been stressful, but there's one more thing we'd like to share with you. I raised an eyebrow. Brian reached into his suit jacket, pulled out an envelope, and slid it across the table. I opened it. Inside was a printed postnuptial agreement, not a joke, not a draft, a formal notarized document already signed by Brian. It listed clauses about marital duties, financial obligations to the family, and the priority of the family matriarch in household leadership. It was dated 2 days after our wedding. He'd signed it without telling me. I folded the paper slowly and slipped it into my bag. Rachel gave me a slight nod from across the room. She'd heard everything. I stood up. No yelling, no scene. I looked at Brian and said, you didn't marry me. You hired me. Then I looked at Anita. And you didn't want a daughter-in-law. You wanted a mirror. Then I left. That night, Brian left me a voicemail. I saved it. His voice was shaking, not crying, just shaking. You could have at least tried. You could have stayed. You knew who I was. You promised you'd be different from the last one, but you're the same. Selfish. Cold. You turned her against me too, my own mother. That's when I realized he genuinely believed it. He thought I'd betrayed him, not because I left, but because I didn't become AO. 2 weeks after that dinner, I thought it was over. Rachel was finalizing the annulment. Brian stopped emailing and had gone quiet. I started to feel normal again, eating full meals, sleeping through the night, actually smiling without feeling like it was glued on. But it wasn't over. They had one last bullet in the chamber. I work in marketing, mid-level, not flashy, but I'm good at what I do. One morning, my manager pulls me into her office and says there was an anonymous tip about me using company resources for personal revenge campaign. She shows me the email. It's full of wild claims, says I'm using company time to harass a grieving mother, that I'm misrepresenting a private family dispute as abuse, and that I may be involved in fraudulent financial activity. It was written like a police report, clean, organized, full of dramatic language, but I knew the tone. It was Anita. Rachel advised me to stay calm. She said, you've done everything right. You have proof, but if you want closure, real closure, you'll need to say it to his face once. So I did something I didn't expect of myself. I requested a meeting with both of them, one last time. Neutral ground, a law office conference room downtown. 2 lawyers present, Rachel, a mediator. No one could scream, no one could lie. We sat across a glossy oak table from each other. Anita dressed like she was going to church. Brian, pale, twitchy, hands clasped too tightly. I came with a folder. The mediator starts the session, introduces everyone, lays the ground rules. I say nothing at first. Then, I pull up 3 things from my folder. 1. The email to my job printed. 2. The bank transfers Brian made. 3. The postnuptial agreement I never signed. I place them in front of Brian. He looks down, doesn't speak. I look at Anita and ask, why did you do it? Why did you come after my job? She smiles. I had to. You were poisoning my son's mind. He's not himself. He's weak. He's lost. Then Brian finally speaks. Stop. She blinks. Excuse me. Stop talking like that. The room goes quiet. Brian stands up, looks at his mom, and says, you've ruined everything. I loved her. I still love her. But I chose you, and I keep choosing you. And I don't even know why anymore. For the first time ever, Anita's face changes. She looks scared, not angry, not smug, just stunned. He keeps going. You told me she'd betray me. You told me she'd leave, like Sarah. But maybe they didn't leave me. Maybe they left you, and I just let it happen. You said you'd cut me off, take me out of your will. You raised me to and now, I don't even know how to be a man without asking your permission. He turns to me. I'm sorry, I was weak. You didn't deserve what I did. I believe him, but that doesn't change anything. Anita stands up, looks at everyone in the room like we're insects, then hisses, "You'll regret this," and walks out. No more words, no tears, no final blow. Just her heels clicking down the hallway, like a slow goodbye. Brian sits down again, buries his face in his hands. No one says anything for a while. Then the mediator softly asks, "Would you like to continue or take a break?" I say, "We're done here," and I leave. Brian emails me once more after that. A real apology this time. He says he's in therapy, says he cut his mother off, says he moved out of her house and got his own apartment in a bad part of town, says he's working nights and trying to figure out who he is without her voice in his head. He doesn't ask to get back together. He doesn't beg. He just says, "You were the first person who told me I could be more than what she built me to be. I'm sorry I didn't listen when I had the chance." I never reply. Weeks later, Rachel and I are sitting on her balcony, drinking bad wine and listening to the city buzz at night. She says, "You know, you weren't just his wife. You were his escape plan, his lifeline." I nod. "But I wasn't a rescue mission. I was a person." She clinks her glass against mine. "Exactly. Here's what I learned. Sometimes love isn't enough when the person you love is still trapped in someone else's shadow. Sometimes you don't win by yelling or fighting. You win by walking away, before you become someone you won't recognize." And I left that house. I left that name. I left the weight of someone else's family expectations behind. And in the silence that followed, I finally heard my own voice again. Clear, calm, free. This is where our story comes to end. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and follow. Thanks to all for your support.